So I'll let you introduce yourself, give us a bit more details before we jump into the discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, Jermaine. Good morning, St. Kitts. Great to be on with you this morning to talk a little bit more about Financial Information Month. I'm Carmen Gomez-Trigg, the Chief Executive Officer of the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation, ECPCGC, a tongue twister, I know, but that's the way it is. So we are based on the campus of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and we are offering some products which I will tell you more about during the course of this program.
Great. It is indeed a tongue twister. So let us start first with, because not a lot of people know a lot about the ECPCGC. So give us a little bit insight. You know, you said it's a partial credit guarantee. For the people out there who don't necessarily know what this means, give them a little bit of an insight in terms of exactly what is the partial credit guarantee and how this is going to impact them.
Okay, so I just want to, tongue twister aside, I think I want to start from the very basics because not many people know what a guarantee is about. So let me first start by saying what that is. And probably before that, I would want to start as to why we are around. So after the global meltdown in 2008, the World Bank and ECCB found that our business class, our small and medium entrepreneurs were not growing. And when they did a deeper dive, they discovered that the reason why they weren't growing is because they did not have the access, they could not access the financing that they need to grow their businesses. Now, you know, we need money to purchase supplies, we need money to purchase equipment, we need money to go out there and market our goods and services to our publics and so on. So they found that without the money, there was a stunting of the growth of the entrepreneurial class. In an effort to sort of get around that, they would have interviewed and spoken with the financial institutions to find out, well, why is this happening? And they discovered that in a lot of instances, people would have businesses, they would present themselves to the financial institutions for money to grow their businesses, but there were certain things that they lacked. The main one being that the bank would ask you for what we call security, which is really collateral. We call it security in the Caribbean. So if you go to them for a loan, they would ask you, well, what do you have to pledge? In the case of a consumer who's borrowing money for a vehicle, they would use the vehicle as that security. In the case of a business, a small business person, it was harder for them to come by the amount of money that they needed to give the bank to pledge so that they could get the loan. So the idea was born that they could form this agency, ECPCGC, which would pledge a certain amount of that security to the bank on behalf of the borrower. So that's what we're about. And 6 countries in the ECCU, that's Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Those 6 countries came together and invested $2 million US dollars into a pot. And that is the pot that we're using to run this agency. Now, I want to emphasize that this guarantee program is not a grant. It's not free money. It's to help the small business owner so that when he goes to the bank and does not have enough money to pledge as collateral for the loan, we can come in and support him in that regard.
Okay, I want to quickly jump to what you said there. You guys are acting as a guarantee in terms of backing the small businesses. But in terms of how does that work? Because let's say Mr. Abel, the small business, he went to a bank and he does not have all the necessary finances to guarantee the loan. In terms of backing, how do I approach the the tongue twister, the ECPCGC, in terms of getting that assistance and guarantee in order to be able to get the necessary loan that I would need?
Okay, so thank you for that question. So the first point of contact that has been used is the bank, the financial institution. We do have most of the commercial banks in the region, and we are now at the stage of admitting credit unions. And I know small business people tend to like to deal with the credit unions more than with the banks. So let's put that out there as a source of comfort. So you as a business person would go to the bank. Now, these are the things you would need to do in readiness for dealing with a bank. You need to have your business must be underway. It must have been in operation for at least 3 months, and you need to show the bank, this is what I've been doing over the last 3 months. These are my receipts where I pay people. These are the invoices I would send to customers, or you must show them some sort of record of your inflows, what cash comes in, and your outflows, what cash goes out. It could be in a notebook. So you come to the bank with that and you say, I have this little business. I'm probably, let's just give a hypothetical example. I'm making these really, really good teas. I'm getting my leaves and I'm drying and I'm making some blend of bush tea. And I want to grow that because I'm eyeing to go to the hotels, or I'm eyeing the market in Antigua or Anguilla. And I would like to expand into that area. For expansion, I would need X, Y, and Z. And you would present the bank with an outline as to how much you need, what you need it for. Now, the what you need it for must be backed by some kind of an invoice that you'd have gotten from a supplier. Let's say you wanted to get a new mixer to mix the dried leaves. You would have procured from that supplier a cost of that particular piece of equipment, right? So that's your record keeping, is your inflows and your outflows. What you're going to buy would be the cost of the equipment you want to get. If it's a case where you want to purchase stock, you must have something from the supplier saying, I want to buy 100 bales of dried leaves. You must have something, because the bank is not going to go on your word alone. And ECPCGC, when we get the application, we would not go on your word alone. So you have those bits and pieces of information. You should have some kind of business account. And if you don't, the bank can guide you as to how to set up a business account. And you talk to your banking officer. We do have SME, what you call small and medium enterprise officers at most of the banks, and they would deal with you, they would listen to you and so on. Now, if the bank finds that you don't have the required amount of financial statements and they need more financial statements to assess how viable your business is, they would send a note to us and say, Mr. X has come to us for a loan and we think can get a guarantee. However, in order to perform a full assessment, we would like you to help us get his financial statements in order. We can then put the bank and the borrower onto a particular accountant who would pull those statements together for the client. We would take up that cost as well. So, okay, so let's assume all of that has been done and the bank has said the client is good. He has passed all of our checks and balances. His credit is in order. The invoices are in order. We can see a record of how his business has been going. He has, his marketing in order and so on. Then the bank would say, ECPCGC, he wants to get 100,000 borrowed, but he does not have enough collateral. He probably has just about $20,000 that we can hold, or he has a vehicle that we can hold. He has something that we can hold as collateral or security, as we call it, but we need some more. And then ECPCGC would say to the bank, okay, this seems to be a good loan. We would hold that $80,000 for you on behalf of the client. So we would instruct the bank, okay, the guarantee is approved. You can go ahead and you can let the client have the funds. The client takes the funds and he continues his business, he continues his record keeping and so on. So really and truly, it's a kind of an arrangement between three parties, the bank, the entrepreneur, and ECPCGC. Now, once a client has the funds, if all goes well, he pays his loan, pays it on time, conducts his business in a great manner. However, sometimes things happen, and if some eventuality happens where the business, for some reason, goes under, we would do our due diligence, and if everything is okay, then we would talk to the bank, and the bank and ECPCGC would work out a settlement where we can, pay the bank on behalf of the client because he's no longer able to pay. The bank would, however, continue to work with the client to make good on that guarantee.
Okay. I want to ask a couple of questions on that note, but we have to acknowledge our partners who make the program possible, and then when we come back, we'll continue with this discussion.
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust to secure your investment. You need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us. TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind. You're always safe with us.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
It's Financial Information Month in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Financial empowerment through education. If you don't know what that is, let me tell you all about it. Learn to spend wisely. Invest to grow your money. Business stability. Step up financially. Help the region's economy. Work to financial security. Prosperity for all of we. FIM is for you and me. FIM is for everybody. So tell your friends and your whole family. Financial empowerment through education. Build yourself and the entire vision. Learn to spend wisely. Invest to grow your money. Business stability. Step up financially. Financial Information Month. Financial empowerment through education.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Inside the News here on WINNFM 98.9. I am Jermaine Abel sitting in today, and we're talking with Ms. Carmen Gomez-Trigg of the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee. Yes, I got that correct.
Yes.
And we're talking about the role of the ECPCGC this morning and how they're helping to assist small businesses in the Eastern Caribbean. Before we took the break, we were discussing how the body is assisting small businesses, especially those who are not necessarily able to meet the minimum requirements for loan guarantees. So, and you mentioned about if there's some businesses that default. So what I wanted to get from you, since the establishment of this agency, how specifically, or how many businesses, small businesses, whether in the entire currency union or in St. Kitts and Nevis specifically, have you guys assisted? And have you seen the repayment of loans or the loans from these financial institutions? Are these businesses being consistent in their repayment? Because if you're not necessarily in a financial position that you can actually meet the minimum repayment.
Right. So we've done over 60 guarantees to the tune of 8.2 million EC dollars, and we started we launched in 2020. Our first guarantee was in St. Lucia in 2021. So COVID came and sort of knocked us, knocked the senses out of us for a little while, I should say. And we did have a very gray period when business people were looking to just shore up their finances rather than take new loans. So we're now coming back into the mainstream. And so we've been gathering some momentum as we go along. And the sectors that we've serviced are across the board: fishing, entertainment, retail, solar, air conditioning, you name it. We are open to everybody. The country that is leading in guarantees right now is Grenada, followed by St. Lucia. So there's a lot of work to be done still in St. Kitts and some of the other jurisdictions in which we do business. So we are encouraging everybody to come out. If you don't understand the program, send us an email at info@ecpcgc.org. We answer your questions. We direct you where you need to go and so on. In terms of default has been minimal so far, very, very minimal. And we credit that to the level of review that is performed by the banking community, and also the level of review that we do internally as well. We ask a lot of questions because we do have a responsibility to the governments of the day who've invested this money into the program. We need to be responsible in the way we do guarantees, similarly to the banks who need to be responsible in the way they lend the money of the depositors. So there is that level of responsibility that we have towards our funders, our investors, and we also have a level of responsibility towards the SMEs as well, to make sure that they get the required finance that they needed, provided that they fit the qualifying conditions.
One of the things that we have recognized, especially in St. Kitts and Nevis, is the lack of education for an awareness in terms of bookkeeping, record keeping for small businesses, small and medium enterprises. Is there a push, a thrust from the credit guarantee that this is something that you guys are focusing on as part of the whole thrust to get people to better understand the role of your organization? Because and we've seen it, people do not necessarily invest or have that education or knowledge in terms of how to spend monies when it comes to businesses, especially the sole traders.
Right. Okay. Yes, that is correct. And it is borne out by what we see when we get applications sometimes, or even when we just discuss applications with some of our bankers. There's very little information. So I know that SBDC does run some programs. I know the Ministry of Women's Affairs in St. Kitts, they do some programs. And one of the things that is on our in our future is that we would be partnering with some of these business support organizations to do some targeted instruction to the entrepreneurs. For example, business registration. A lot of sole traders, entrepreneurs do not want to register their businesses because they do not see the benefit. They think that the tax man is coming after them. That is something that we want to sort of, that belief is something that we want to get rid of. There are concessions available for people who register government programs also ask that you register before you are admitted to the programs. So that's the first thing. The second challenge, and all of these are coming because of the lack of education that you alluded to a while ago. The second challenge that we're having is the inability or unwillingness of the entrepreneurs to keep proper records. Now, when you come to the bank wants to know about you. They want to know about your business because they are lending you money that has been deposited by somebody else, and they have to make sure that this is a good loan, that it can be repaid. Therefore, they are going to ask you for documentation to prove that your business is successful and that you can pay the loan. So the documentation is a recurring issue with regard to the entrepreneurs. And I know that the courses that are being held across the region do emphasize the importance of the documentation, but I don't know that the courses that we are holding so far are having the desired effect, or that they are changing the behaviors of our entrepreneurs.
You made a valid point there, because when I'm in the hot seat, I like to go beyond the technical aspects of the discussions to get the smaller man to understand the importance of that. And I think you just actually alluded to that by saying the education, the courses that are being offered are not necessarily going to the root of getting people to understand the importance of record keeping, financial keeping, how to manage a business. Is this something that you guys will be taking up, the ECCB and the whole arm of the bank and, you know, ECP, CGC? Is it something that you guys will be looking at across the currency union to get educational institutions to better understand that there's some tweaks or changes needed in terms of the educational aspect of what they're putting forth?
Oh, yes, most certainly, because we have a promotion on right now from October until the ending of December, where we are encouraging the banks to get out there and you know, get more SMEs to come and borrow. And we are also asking SMEs, it's on our Facebook page, we are inviting them to send us inquiries, and we can answer those queries and direct them accordingly. In addition to that, we are going to be visiting each island during the course of this promotion, and we would be doing one-on-one consultations with entrepreneurs by appointment, of course. We'll be doing one-on-one consultations with MSMEs to guide them. So, for example, let us assume that somebody comes to us and he says, I want a loan. We would talk to him and say, well, what have you done? How much have you invested? Where's your business going? What are your records? Do you have records? If you don't have records, you can't go to the bank to get a loan. The bank would not lend you. Therefore, you need, and we would show them what they need to do to be able to get themselves bankable. What do you need to do? You need to open a business account. This is what you need to do to open a business account. So those would be the one-on-one consultations that we would be having during the course of this promotion. The one-on-ones would continue into the new year after the promotion is done, because we know that there are a lot of people out there who don't really want to go to a bank. But if they can talk to somebody outside of the banking sector who can sort of open a door for them, then they would be willing to talk to that person. So we are trying to open that door to some of our entrepreneurs who really would not want to go to the bank in the first instance, but want to be advised as to what they need to do to become bankable.
That's a valid point, because a lot of people don't want to be bogged down, be burdened by having to deal with banks, for example, where the interest rates might be what they classify as extremely high in terms of repayment. What sort of role do you think the credit unions specifically, is it important for the credit union to be involved in this whole credit guarantee the role that the banks are going to play? Do they have an important role to play in terms of getting more small and medium enterprises developed across the currency union?
Most certainly, the credit unions, they play a critical role in the economy as a whole, because in the Caribbean, almost everybody has a credit union account. Or a lot of people, they have a bank account and they have a credit union account. And when they want to borrow money, they tell you they go to the credit unions. We are happy to announce that St. Kitts Credit Union has been admitted to the guarantee program. We are now training, or we are now setting up the training for the members of that credit union. And we are admitting other credit unions across the region, because in the Caribbean, you know, we some of us are very grassroots, and we want to go to the grassroots institutions to do business, and the credit union has always been a grassroots institution. So yes, we see the role of the credit unions, and we think that once the credit unions have come on board, that we would see a lot more guarantees happening, a lot more loan applications happening. So yes, definitely, it is critical to the success of this project that we have the credit unions on board.
And I agree with that. Because a lot of people prefer to, you know, back in the old days, people would say, hey, you know, I'll save my money under the bed, right? And now a lot of young people really who are entering businesses, do not necessarily want to go to the credit union, well, not the credit, but the banks themselves to borrow monies to invest in their business. And they're looking at other ways and means of getting the financing that, you know, just to avoid the banks, you know, technically. But since COVID, what were some of the lessons or challenges that your institution you would have found with businesses? What did you guys learn specifically from coming out of COVID about small and medium enterprises?
Okay, there were many lessons. The first one was that a lot of our businesses are risk averse, meaning that they don't want to take unnecessary risks. So they weren't borrowing during COVID. The revenues, cash inflows, they sort of decreased. So they were a lot more cautious about borrowing, and I can't blame them for that. The other thing we learned was that a lot of people have side hustles in the Caribbean. And when COVID struck, some of those side hustles became mainstream. So we had to craft 2 new products for during COVID. One was a working capital guarantee, where people who had established businesses were able to borrow some money to help them defray their expenses. You know, like some of them rents were piling up. They needed to pay wages, you know, even if people were on half time, they needed to pay those wages, and the money was just not coming in. So we were able to help some of them through that period. Interestingly enough, what we did do also was design a startup guarantee, which was for the people who had the side hustles that now became mainstream. We asked them, we asked our bankers, well, what do you think we need? And we came together and we designed a program where if the person was in business for more than 3 months and the banker or the lender could satisfy himself or herself that the business is doing okay, they've put in some money in the business and so on, then we can talk to them. So we had a startup guarantee. So the working capital and the startup guarantees were very popular during COVID. It did also tell us about the resourcefulness of our Caribbean people, how we can pivot. So if it is that the job goes, then we can find something else to do. Even COVID, there were some new businesses that cropped up during COVID that we saw sight of. Some of them did not qualify for loans, but we do know that, you know, there was a mushrooming of business opportunities that took place during COVID. And we know that we are going to see some of them now that time has passed and they've sort of done the proof of concept of their idea. We know that we are going to see them come into us for guarantees.
When we look at small businesses, and I think we don't necessarily do a lot of this in the Caribbean, and that is credit. How important it is for small businesses to begin to think about credit and approaching banks or financial institutions, whether it be for line of credit or credit itself, in order to develop their business and the products that they're offering.
Okay, so there's certain stages of growth of a business. In the initial stages where you just need seed capital, you can get it from there's a saying in the industry, the 3 F's, the family, friends, or fools, but you can borrow from yourself, borrow from your family. If the business fails in the early stages, you would not have invested too much and so on. So that's stage 1. Let us assume that your business goes on from stage 1. Then stage 2 is your growth and development stage. Sometimes you can fund this from your own pocket, maybe borrow from people and so on. But there comes a time in the business, in the cycle, business cycle, the growth cycle of the business, where you're going to need a huge injection of funds. And that is the time that you would come to the bank, the credit union, to get a loan and to get a guarantee. It may be for business expansion. Let us assume you're working on your kitchen table and you now want to put on a room to do your manufacturing. Let us assume you wanted to go into export. You need to do labeling. You need to know the HACCP manufacturing codes and so on. That's another thing. So when you start to go into an expansion of business, you are going to need credit. That's just it. There's no way that you'll be able to fund that from your own pocket or from the inflow of business and so on. You're going to need something to sort of help you make that push into a new direction, into a new sphere of business.
Okay, so I think my question to that would be, at what stage specifically would the small, medium enterprise, or will it be when they reach the medium enterprise stage that they're to take the credit? Because a lot of us in the Caribbean, quote unquote, we prefer to, when we reach a stage, we take them on and not necessarily reinvest it. Mm-hmm. And then we put ourselves in a difficult position where we have to go to the banks or the credit unions to borrow. So at what point do we see it is important for us to jump to the credit and the line of credit? Okay,
so you made a very valid point about people taking the money out of the business. That is very, very prevalent. It's supposed to be a no-no, because when you do that, you run into problems, because the money that you need to re-inject in stock is no longer there because you took it and you bought a car, or you went on a cruise, or you took a trip or something like that. So that's one point. The second point, in terms of the timing, how do you know you're going to need credit? Let me give you an example. Let us assume that in the earlies, you could have purchased $10,000 in stock, and it could last you for 6 months without you running out, and you could have serviced your clientele. But you're realizing that the same stock that you're buying, in terms of quantity, is running out in 3 months. Your business is growing, you're selling more, and you realize that I have to be going back to the supplier every 3 months. Something is happening here. At that stage, when you're getting these stockouts, let's say the 3 months going to 1 month, you realize that you can't keep up with the demands of the business just by re-injecting and reinvesting and so on. Because if you're buying every 3 months or every month, you're losing out on buying large quantities and getting discounts and so on. At that point, I would say you need to take stock and determine if you need to be buying larger quantities. And if you do determine that, that is the point that you can approach the bank or the lender, the credit union, to say, look, this is my situation. I'm realizing I'm running out of stock much more quickly than before. I'm getting more sales, but I need help to purchase a larger quantity so I do not have stockouts. So that's one example of how you would know that it is time to approach a bank for credit. That's one example. Second example would be, let us assume you're doing something, you're making some sort, maybe you're doing catering or something, you're using your kitchen tools, your tools at home to do your catering, and you realize that, you know, the kitchen blender, I have to be doing so many mixes to get to do a day or a week's sales. I think I need a bigger machine that would make a lot of batches in one go. That's another example of how you would know. So the entrepreneurs sometimes knows instinctively when they need more, and the more that they need would tell them that they need to go to someone to help them finance the purchases.
Well, you actually preempted my next question. But at this point, we're going to take a quick break, acknowledge our partners, and then when we come back, we'll continue the discussion, because I think you jumped into a critical juncture, and then I'll get from you also, you know, some of what products that you're offering and how these are going to benefit the small business. So we'll come right back after the break, and we'll continue with the discussion.
Okay.
It's October, and the TDC Home and Building Depot has gone pink in support of breast cancer awareness. Shop in-store or online for our pink tag specials with up to 75% off selected items. And be sure to look out for our Flash Sales Fridays, where you get even more savings. Plus, every Saturday from 10 a.m. till 12 p.m., our team of health professionals will be in-house, offering free breast screening and the chance to win a free mammogram. So this October, remember to think pink. Think TDC Home and Building Depots. Terms and conditions apply. See stores for details.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
It's Financial Information Month in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Financial empowerment through education. If you don't know what that is, let me tell you all about it. Learn to spend wisely. FIA. Invest to grow your money. FIA. Business stability. FIA. Step up financially. FIA. Help build the region's economy. Work to financial security. Prosperity for all of we. FIM is for you and me. FIM is for everybody. So tell your friends and your whole family. Financial empowerment through education. Build yourself and the entire region. Learn to spend wisely. FIM. Invest to grow your money. FIM. Business stability. FIM. Step up financially. FIM. Financial Information Month. Financial empowerment through education.
Welcome back to Inside the News here on Win FM. I'm Jeremy Abel, sitting in the hot seat today, and we're discussing the role and importance of the Eastern Caribbean Partial Guarantee Corporation or Agency. And we have with us Ms. Carmen Gomez-Trigg. And we're discussing how they're assisting small businesses both in St. Kitts and Nevis and across the current Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Before we took the break, you were talking about how small businesses have to think outside the box in terms of how they need to expand and make those decisions. But when we look at those really small businesses and business persons and entrepreneurs who don't necessarily keep records, like let's say a hair braider, or someone who, as you said before, someone who's making food products and blending and all of that. And this segment, we're looking specifically at some of the products that you're offering. How should they develop themselves, think, and look overall internally as a business person to make that decision that this is where I want to go, I need to expand, but I'm not keeping proper records. How, and you could talk about some of the products that you're offering. How is a small man like that, the ordinary man on the street, the fisherman, the vendors, a farmer maybe, how are they to make this decision and get the ECP, CGC involved in their business?
Okay, so thanks for that. We know that among our numbers, we do have a lot of micro entrepreneurs, the vendors, the farmer, the fishermen, and so on. But we've also seen among our numbers again, vendors, farmers, fishermen who have grown their business. So I think it's a mindset. If it is that the entrepreneur is content to stay small, then there's nothing we can do to make them grow. However, if it is they want to grow, then they would adopt some of the practices that are handed out to them by the SVDC and so on in the training programs. The first one is to separate your personal from your business affairs. I remember a vendor selling in the market. She had it right, even though she was very informal, and I'll go into what informal means in a little bit. She said, when I get my money, a piece of it is to go to replenish my stock. A piece of it is to go for my transport to take the goods to the market, and the balance is profit. And what I find happening in a lot of instances is that our micro entrepreneurs they're not dividing the monies that they get into those three tranches, and therefore everything goes into the household. And it's difficult for them to know, and for us to know as well, where the business stops and where the household begins. Unfortunately, there would be some people who would always do business like that. But there are some people who want to grow their business, and they recognize that they have to do things differently if they want to grow. The first thing they would do is say, okay, this is my main means of income. Some of this has the best, I'm generating this, so that I can live. So they pay themselves a salary on a monthly basis, and that salary goes into the household. The rest of the affairs is the business affairs, and then they can see clearly how the business is doing. Once you continue to mingle the household and the business, it would be very, very difficult for you to determine how to grow, because you really would not have a guide as to how the business is really going. So that's my advice to the people who want to grow. Start to separate the two. That's the first bit of advice. The second bit of advice is that you need to register the business, because there are government concessions, there are programs and so on that you can benefit from if you register the business. So that's a second bit of advice. So you have a trading as, a doing business as. It differs from country to country within the currency union. The third bit of advice is you need to open a business account. I know I have been told it's difficult to get a business account opened. There are many hoops to jump through and so on. But have some patience, because it is a vision that you are on a path towards achieving. And the vision suggests that I need to do X, Y, and Z to get to my destination. Therefore, I take my time and I do those things. And once you open that business account, you start to run your income, the money that you're getting through that business account, so that the people at the bank can see a track record as to what this business is actually doing. So, I want to say it's a difficult journey if you're now starting, but at the end of the day, the benefits that you will accrue, the benefits that you would reap would be a lot. But you have to start from now. You have to start small, because the bank would not look at you. The credit union's business center would not look at you unless you can present some specific details to them as evidence by your record keeping, and by, your bank statements and so on. And now I wanted, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to touch a little bit on the products that you had asked about. So we have 3 products which can assist the business person. We have the classic guarantee, which is for larger businesses where the loan that we would approve a guarantee for would go up to $750,000. And then we have the working capital guarantee where people can use to pay some back rent, some back NIS, other, maybe buy a little bit of stock and so on. That one goes up to $200,000. And then we have the startup guarantee, which is for businesses that are in operation from 3 months to 2 years. The loan limit on that one is $100,000. But I want to reiterate that without the documents and the registration, that you would not actually be able to access these guarantees.
So someone asked me a question here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think you alluded to it earlier, but just to reiterate for them, do we apply to ECPCGC or do we go to the bank? Just for this question, for this person here.
Okay, so we have 2 banks in St. Kitts and the credit union. So we have Republic Bank and we have National Bank in St. Kitts and St. Kitts Cooperative Credit Union. So those are the 3 partners that we have in St. Kitts right now. You can approach either one of those. However, if you don't quite understand the guarantee, you can send us an email at info@ecpcgc.org and one of our team would respond to you, give you some more information so that you can make up your mind about, whether this is the way you want to go or not, but you would have the information that we would send to you.
Okay, so just for clarification for the listeners, I have my documents and everything. I approach, let's say, the National Bank or Republic Bank or the credit union. Do I go to the lender? Do I go to the loan office and say, hey, I'm applying for a loan of $750,000? Do I mention ECCPGC, or they will just run through the application and then they approach you guys with the information?
I would suggest that they mention the guarantee program because it takes a little bit more work on the part of the lender. So you need to say, I want to be in line for the guarantee program, because it's a guarantee to you, the business person as well, that if things go south, you have that bit of comfort that somebody has your back. If you just don't tell them about it and they don't open the door to you about the program, then it's a little bit more risky for you. So I would recommend that you talk to them and say, I want to get the ECPCGC guarantee. Could you tell me how I can access that program?
And is there a minimum standard in which a business person would be able to qualify, or be able just to make that standard to qualify for what you're offering?
Not a minimum standard per se. You need to have your documentation. You need to be registered. You need to know what you're borrowing the money from. So let me just make a hypothetical scenario. You can't go to the banker and scratch your head and say, well, I think I want to do this, and I think I want to, but without any clarity. You, as the borrower, need to know what your business is about. You need to be able to discuss your business with the banker. You need to be able to say, to vocalize exactly what you want the money for, and to back up that with invoices or with some kind of illustration. Look, I want to get this new blender to make new mixes for my business. The blender is going to cost so much and so much. I'm bringing it in from this place. The customs and the brokerage, it cost me so much and so much. So the landed cost would be $10,000. This is what I really want the money for. And the banker will ask you, well, how is this going to help your business? You could tell them, well, look, instead of doing 10 mixes and paying staff 10 days for the month, I would now do 2 mixes and have staff for less days a month, and I can go into another area or so on. You have to justify and explain to the banker what you want, because what they're doing is they're entrusting you with people's money, and they have to be sure that you know what you're doing and that you can repay the loan.
I like how you underscore that point. You have to know what you're doing.
Yes.
Because a lot of small businesses, the medium enterprise, they've been through and they've graduated. But I'm not sure a lot of the small businessmen and women totally understand that. Okay, this option is open for me. I'm able to just apply for it, and then I was turned down. But I didn't necessarily understand why I was not given this loan, or why did I not qualify for the partial guarantee. And I think this has to do more with education. And I think you touched on that a bit earlier.
Certainly, yes. It is about education. It is also about helping the business people navigate what could become very complicated if you just went into a business. So it's having to navigate that minefield to determine how can I track my own little path through all of these distractions and so on. So it is education. It is some one-on-one attention that is required as well, where the business support organizations can come into and assist with some mentoring, some hand-holding, and so on. ECPCGC is not staffed to do the mentoring, but I do know that there are support organizations in the countries that can assist with that. The SBDCs, the CEDU in St. Lucia, the Investment Authority in Antigua, different organizations can come in and provide that kind of support that some of our business people need.
Okay, we just have about a minute left. I personally can say this. I've not really heard about much about a partial guarantee. I did hear a bit, but I didn't go into finding out a lot of information until the program today. But I want you to, because we're almost out of time, just give us some parting words, especially for small and medium enterprise businesses, and just to remind them of how they can, get in contact with you or the organization in terms of getting the assistance that is needed.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll be very brief. The first thing I can say is that you can send us an email at info@ecpcgc.org. That's 1. 2, you can go to our Facebook page that has a lot of information on it. And I want to remind business people that if you are in business to stay, you need to keep your records. You need to register your business. You need to have a vision for your business, and you need to follow that vision, doggedly. You need to follow that vision. That's the only way you will be able to grow and develop.
Well, thank you. I think after this show, I believe your email will be full and your phone will be ringing off.
No problem. We welcome all the inquiries.
All right. Thank you. That was Miss Carmen Gomez-Trigg of the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee. We will now break for the midday news, and at the other side of the break, we'll continue with Inside the News. I was Jeremy Abel, hosting the first hour of the program, and we'll be right back.
You found the sound. 98.9 Win FM.
We now bring you the headline news. The headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, and Carib Brewery.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world, whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous. You can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International. By land, sea or air, we get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises at 466-9595.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
When it comes to the important things in life, your health, your education, your choice of a life partner, and of course your insurance provider, only the best will do. Caribbean Alliance Insurance is the only insurance company in the Eastern Caribbean with an A excellent rating. We have a robust 3-tier reinsurance strategy that protects our policyholders from multiple catastrophes, even if they occur in quick succession. We spread our risks over 18 territories, ensuring minimal impact to individual territories when a disaster strikes. We provide an excellent claims experience. Claim settlement is usually between 24 to 48 hours. Our A excellent rating means that you are more secure with us. Contact us for motor, property, marine, public liability, employer's liability, and other policies. Dalil Walwyn, people you can trust. Local agent for Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tomorrow secured.
With the WINNFM Midday News, I am Kevon Brown. Our top stories. St. Kitts and Nevis Youth Tourism Ambassadors highlighted the St. Kitts Music Festival and Botanical Gardens in Tourism Youth Congress proposals. Finance Minister opens week of activities to commemorate International Credit Union Day. A self-styled prophet is facing manslaughter charges in baptism death. Guyana's opposition continues to question the government on the oil audit fiasco. Internationally, more than 1 million people living in northern Gaza are still being told to evacuate as Israel prepares to launch its expected ground offensive. Now the details. Cameron O'Dane and Rushka Sharma, junior ministers of tourism for St. Kitts and Nevis respectively, participated in the Caribbean Tourism Organization 2023 Regional Tourism Youth Congress. On Friday morning, October 13th, the young tourism ambassadors joined 12 other regional counterparts on stage in the Turks and Caicos Islands to market their homelands as viable tourist destinations. O'Dane, a student of the Washington Archibald High School, highlighted the St. Kitts Music Festival as a premier event that would ensure any visitor an enjoyable and unique experience in St. Kitts.
Colleagues, we all know that tourism is of paramount importance. Hence, I believe the St. Kitts Music Festival would provide visitors with a rare and exceptional experience. Unlike other festivals, the St. Kitts Music Festival showcases a wide variety of genres, such as soca, calypso, and R&B. This eclectic mix of music allows visitors to have a unique experience. Additionally, The event showcases a number of local, regional, and international stars, thus allowing visitors to learn of and appreciate artists they've never even heard of. All these things lend to make the St. Kitts Music Festival one of a kind.
A student of the Charlestown Secondary School on Nevis, Ruska Sharma, featured the botanical gardens, expressing that visitors would get a true essence of natural beauty and medicinal empowerment from their visit.
Colleagues, Nevis is home to many different activities and events that visitors can partake in during their stay. The one place that I would like to highlight is the botanical gardens. Firstly, this would promote ecotourism, showcasing that you don't always need a fancy activity, just enjoy nature at its finest. In other words, this would promote Nevis naturally. Secondly, this would also be an educational experience for the tourists, unlike most tourist attractions. They will get to learn about the origins, the medicinal powers, and the scientific names of the plants as they walk through. Colleagues, a visit to the botanical gardens in Nevis will definitely be an exceptionally memorable and unique experience for all visitors.
Though the St. Kitts and Nevis delegates did not secure a place in the top position of the competition, the judges' report acknowledged that all participants were exceptional in their delivery and the marketing of their respective islands. The 2023-2024 Regional Junior Minister of Tourism is Naomi Onwufuju from the British Virgin Islands. Jordan Gregg, Junior Minister of Tourism from Barbados, placed second, while Giles Morgan, Junior Minister of Tourism from Tobago, placed third. International Credit Union Day, commemorated every October 19th, reflects upon the credit union movement's history, promotes its achievements, recognizes the hard work, and shares member experiences. In St. Kitts and Nevis, the week of activities will run from October 16th through 20th. Ahead of the 75th anniversary of International Credit Union Day, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, officially delivered an address to mark the occasion. He spoke of the significance of credit unions and declared the week of activities open.
My fellow citizens and residents, it is with immense pleasure that I declare the opening of Credit Union Week on this historic 75th anniversary. This week is not only a celebration of the achievements of progress made by our credit unions locally and across the globe, but also a moment to reflect on the values they uphold: solidarity, community, and financial inclusion. This year's theme, Digital Transformation for Financial Inclusion, arrives at the perfect moment, striking a chord of utmost relevance and urgency. In an era where technology has become an integral part of our daily lives, it is imperative that our financial institutions keep pace. This theme underlines the commitment of our credit unions to not only adapt to this digital age, but also to lead the way in ensuring that every member of our community has access to the tools and opportunities they need to thrive. It is imperative that we collaborate to devise innovative ways to accomplish this. The St. Kitts Nevis National Cooperative League Limited has been a cornerstone of our nation's financial landscape. For decades, it has played a pivotal role in fostering economic empowerment and social development. Through prudent management, innovative programs, and unwavering dedication, the League has facilitated countless dreams and aspirations, turning them into tangible realities for our citizens. In the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, there are 4 operational credit unions: the St. Kitts Cooperative Credit Union, the Nevis Cooperative Credit Union, the Police Cooperative Credit Union, and the First Federal Credit Union. Each one plays a pivotal role in the economic fabric of St. Kitts and Nevis, embodying the essence of community empowerment and financial inclusivity. As member-owned financial cooperatives, they provide a vital alternative to traditional banking institutions, offering accessible savings, loans, and other financial services to individuals and small businesses. Particularly in a nation characterized by its close-knit communities, credit unions serve as engines of local economic growth, channeling funds back into neighborhoods and fostering self-reliance. Moreover, you have demonstrated exceptional resilience in times of economic turbulence, standing as steadfast pillars of stability and support for your members. Through your unwavering commitment to democratic financial practices and community development, credit unions continue to be linchpins in St. Kitts and Nevis's journey towards economic prosperity and inclusive financial well-being for all. Today, as we celebrate your incredible contributions, we also look to the future. The digital transformation of our credit unions will not only streamline operations, but also enhance accessibility and efficiency for all members. With the advent of online services, mobile banking, and digital lending platforms, we are breaking down barriers and reaching even more citizens, especially those in remote areas. In this government's vision of the future, credit unions will stand as trailblazers, boldly embracing innovation and redefining the landscape of financial services. These institutions will not only remain steadfast in delivering crucial financial support, but will emerge as guiding lights of knowledge, empowerment, and enduring economic prosperity for countless generations. Now is the time for action. Let us harness the transformative potential of technology to usher in an era where no one within our community is left in the shadows. Today, together, we are authors of a groundbreaking narrative in the extraordinary journey of credit unions as we chart an unwavering course towards unparalleled financial inclusion. Join us in shaping a future where prosperity knows no bounds. Thank you, and let us embark on the 75th Credit Union Week with renewed vigor and determination.
According to the World Council of Credit Unions, the day's goal is to raise awareness about the work that credit unions and other financial cooperatives are doing worldwide. In regional news, a self-styled prophet is facing manslaughter charges in baptism death. Primetime Caribbean has the details.
A self-styled Jamaican-born prophet, Cheryl Reid Bartley, who recently visited Grenada, has been arrested in Birmingham, England, on suspicion of manslaughter after a man died during the baptism ceremony there. Emergency services confirmed a man in his late 60s died at a private address on Sunday. Police said that a 46-year-old woman who was arrested in Birmingham on Tuesday has been released on bail while inquiries continue.
They shut me down because principalities in high places didn't want to be exposed.
Reid Bartley caused a major stir in Grenada with her religious-fused antics and even defended her baptism approach right here in an interview with Kalish Faria.
Look at the angel. Look, look, look. Give them something. Look, that's angels. We're in the last days. I'm a last time, end time prophet. You understand? I'm an end time. Angels of God, dip again.
The baptism event was streamed live on the church's Facebook page, but the stream was cut during the event and the video later removed. Reid Bartley said on the Facebook page on Monday, a man called Robert Yap had died.
So he's in a better place than me and you. Because we're prone to sin. We're prone to sin. He didn't have a chance to go back sinning. Not even with his thoughts. He did not have a chance to go back sinning. Me and you in this sinful world. We don't know if we can get that opportunity because we're prone to sin. I love my brother so much, but he's in a better place. That's it.
Guyana's opposition continues to question the government on the oil audit fiasco. Guyana News Source has that report.
Opposition leader Aubrey Norton today said that based on information that he received from the ExxonMobil company during a recent meeting, the decision to slash the questionable expenses that were highlighted in an oil audit report followed an agreement between the government and the ExxonMobil company. While the government has shifted all blame to the head of its petroleum unit, the opposition leader maintains that the decision was a collective one by senior government officials and not just the petroleum head.
We know what we said is correct, absolutely so. There's no need for us to lie, and so that is why we ask in the public domain for Exxon to address it publicly.
Mr. Norton said during the September 8th meeting with ExxonMobil's country minister Alistair Rutledge, it was indicated by the Exxon official that the government and the Exxon company agreed on the sum that would be reduced.
ExxonMobil owes it to the public to say whether it is true or not. In that meeting with us, they did say that they agreed with the decision to bring it down to 3 million. They agreed with the government, and the reason that they didn't pursue it further was because it was voluminous documentation and it would have consumed a lot of time.
While hinting that no agreement was reached, the Minister of Natural Resources, Vikram Bharat, stated recently that the head of the petroleum unit, Bobby Gasai, had no authority to meet with Exxon and reduce the amount of oil costs that were flagged by the Ghana Revenue Authority. Earlier this week, opposition MP Roysdale Ford wrote to the Minister of Natural Resources, requesting information on the reported probe into the fiasco that was conducted by the government. The opposition leader Aubrey Norton today said information from that probe would be irrelevant at this time.
In our press conferences, leader of the opposition, we said clearly that GOSA is not an issue here. And we're not interested in the investigation into GOSA, whether he did it or not. Our position was, one, the PSA and the laws of Guyana give the minister the authority and the responsibility. And you cannot now come and throw GOSA under the bus by saying that it's he who did it.
The government has found itself in an unflattering position over the oil audit report and the reduction in the questionable costs. For its part, the Exxon company recently stated that it provided the government with a number of documents and responses to issues raised in the draft audit report. The company said it has acted in good faith and cooperated with the government and the government's consultants who were appointed to audit the cost recovery for the years 1999 to 2017. The Ghana Revenue Authority, for its part, said the original figure will stand.
We now bring you these international reports.
A week since those Hamas attacks, because Israel is still urging civilians to leave northern Gaza as soon as possible. It specified 2 roads which can be used by Palestinians heading south. Well, more than 1 million were told on Friday to relocate before an expected ground offensive. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said his country's bombardment of Gaza is, quote, just the beginning. More rockets have been fired into Israel and Israeli airstrikes are continuing across Gaza. Military sources in Israel say a senior Hamas commander is among those killed. Israeli forces are continuing their build-up near the boundary with Gaza. While in the north of the country, Israeli troops killed several people they identified as terrorists who were trying to cross the border from Lebanon. And overnight, Israel's military exchanged more cross-border fire with the Iranian-backed Lebanese group Hezbollah. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, as I was saying, is in Saudi Arabia on the latest stop of his tour of the Middle East. Now, Jordan's foreign minister has accused Israel of flagrant breaches of international law and warned the displacement of civilians in Gaza was pushing the whole region towards conflict. And at least 2,200 people in Gaza have been killed in the strikes over the last week, and 1,300 Israelis were killed by Hamas gunmen over last week. And I just want to return to that UNRWA quote that I was telling you about a moment or two ago, because those sources there on the ground from the UN saying that 1 million people have been displaced in just 1 week. So this, their latest tweet, they are talking about the exodus. They say 1 million people have been displaced inside 7 days. In the past 12 hours alone, hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. The exodus continues as people move to southern parts of the Gaza Strip. So that's some of the latest information coming here in central London outside of the BBC. Huge crowds going down Regent Street as pro-Palestinian demonstrators gather here at the BBC before they will start moving towards Whitehall. And we've seen similar scenes across different parts of the world as people come out. As more and more people assemble here for the start of that march down to Whitehall. So that just gives you a glimpse of what is happening here with that pro-Palestinian demonstration and march. But let's go back to what is actually happening on the ground in Gaza, because I was giving you some of the latest details coming from the UN. Well, Jan Egeland is the Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council. He was involved with the Oslo Accords and facilitated talks between the Palestinians and Israelis. Now, he talked to the BBC a little earlier and gave us his assessment of the humanitarian situation in Gaza.
There are hundreds of thousands of people fleeing for their life. There is not something that should be called an evacuation. It's a forcible transfer of people from all of northern Gaza, which is, according to the Geneva Convention, a war crime. There is a siege on Gaza, which means that people are starved. There was a bombing at the Rafah crossing, which everybody is pointing to as the only way corridor, possible humanitarian corridor into an area. So I think really the UK, the US, the EU, all that have rightfully said we're with Israel in fighting terror after the worst terror in Israel's history. I hope they haven't given a green light to smash 1 million children, because that's what's happening now.
Well, there's been significant diplomatic fallout from the war. Saudi Arabia says it has paused talks on normalising relations with Israel. Well, Lord Malak Brown is a former Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. He gives his thoughts on that decision.
Well, I think this was anticipated. It would have been impossible for Saudi Arabia to have continued them at this time. It has in recent years been quite quiet on the issue of Palestinian rights. But when the events of this week unfolded, it, raised its voice much more clearly in defense of the Palestinian people. And it would be, just in terms of the optics and politics of the region, impossible to press on in any effort to normalize relations with Israel at the very same time that Israel was seen as attacking Palestinian Arab civilians in Gaza. But I don't know whether in the longer term, I think this is now up to Israel whether it wants to close that door forever, which would be the result of which will happen, I think, if it makes a long-term occupation or long-term military intervention into Gaza, or whether it recognizes the need to contain its military action in as surgical and brief a form as possible so that it can get this back on track. Because for both Israel and Saudi Arabia, the stakes are high. It would be a reordering of the Middle East in a dramatic way. And I think there will be a desire to try, once the fighting dies down, to try and recover this negotiation.
Well, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, as we've been seeing, is in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia for those talks. It is the latest stop of his Middle East tour. Let's have a listen to a little of what he's been saying.
No country can or should be expected to tolerate what Israel has just been on the receiving end of, which is an attack that almost defies description in words, in which more than 1,300 of its people were slaughtered, along with the nationals of more than 30 other countries, by Hamas. Hamas is not representative of the Palestinian people or their legitimate aspirations for the future. Hamas is a terrorist group. Its only agenda is to destroy the state of Israel and to murder Jews. And it's important that the entire world see it as such. At the same time, as Israel pursues its legitimate right to defending its people and to trying to assure that this never happens again, it is vitally important that all of us look out for civilians. And we're working together to do exactly that. In particular, working on establishing safe areas in Gaza, working on establishing corridors so that humanitarian assistance can reach people who need it. None of us want to see suffering by civilians on any side, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's anywhere else. And we're working together to do our best to protect them. I think at the same time, it's vitally important, and I know that our countries agree, that we work together to make sure that, to the best of our ability, this conflict does not spread to other places on other fronts. And so I look forward to discussing that.
Antony Blinken, well, with me here in the studio is our Middle East regional editor, Mike Thompson. Mike, give me your assessment of this latest leg of this Middle East tour and generally, as he has moved from capital to capital, what Antony Blinken has been trying to do here.
Well, he's trying to get together a concerted anti-Hamas sort of grouping here amongst Arab countries. But he's having a difficult time because with the number of deaths, as we've just been hearing, more than 2,200, and this imminent ground offensive that'll begin fairly soon, many Arab people are just outraged by this. And not just, of course, in the region, but also, as we've been seeing on our television screens right across the world. And this is turning people, most notably actually Saudi Arabia, who he's with at the moment, a key ally, who he's been encouraging to normalise relations with Israel. Now Saudi has said, as we've been hearing, that talks on that have stalled. This is what Hamas wants. Hamas wants to drive this wedge.
Yes, it was one of the theories in terms of why Hamas has actually done this. One of the theories was, as we were edging closer to that normalising deal, Saudi Arabia, crucial players, it was to disrupt that and to dismantle that. But in terms of the wider goings on and reaction in the region, interesting comments too from the Jordanian foreign minister talking about the abyss that was being approached.
Indeed, yes, and of course, the Secretary of State had talks with King Abdullah of Jordan, and the country is very, very concerned about this abyss, as you just mentioned there. And Jordan is a nation which has had strong relations with the US, so this has been in some ways quite surprising and very disappointing for Mr. Blinken that this should be happening. But it's really part and parcel of the attitudes that are now sweeping that whole region.
And there's worry because the Jordanian foreign minister was talking about the displacement of people, and only on Newsnight last night I was watching a senior former military figure suggesting that people should go over, Palestinians should go over into Egypt. That is a real concern, isn't there, that potentially here the movement of Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip completely.
Indeed. I mean, they're all going into areas which in the main are quite agricultural in the south. There's very little to support people, to shelter people. And Egypt has made very clear that it doesn't want refugees across the border. It's got about 280,000 people that fled the war in Sudan, for instance. So it doesn't feel able to deal with that. That could change, of course, under a lot of international pressure, because at the moment people are being expelled into sort of nothingness in a way, and particularly those who are injured, and amongst them, of course, many children as well.
Presumably that is why Antony Blinken continues to talk, and we saw it yesterday in Qatar, about these safe zones, the discussions they're having around that to try to set up somewhere with a bit of infrastructure for people to actually go to. Where are we in terms of the ability to do that?
Well, it's still very complicated to know quite where you would do that. I mean, there could be an area inside Gaza, in the south of Gaza, or more likely in Egypt. But as I said, Egypt is very worried about having temporary refugees that it fears will become permanent. The other option, of course, is on the borders of Gaza inside Israel. And in a way, that might be easiest because Israel can oversee the situation. And as it's also responsible for the barrage and for what looks like the coming land offensive, that would make sense.
Michael, final thought, because here we are a week since those dreadful attacks from Hamas, and just about everything in the region has changed fundamentally, and we know this, only at the beginning.
Indeed, and those, in fact, were the words that Israel has used, Prime Minister Netanyahu has used to say this is just the beginning. And you see the widespread concern, the outrage in the Arab world, the outrage in Israel too, of course, after those atrocities on Saturday. But these are likely to deepen, and deepen significantly as soon as that land assault happens, because this is a very crowded area. There's going to be an awful lot of life, and it's going to be on both sides.
US President Joe Biden says his administration is working to find a way to stop the violence through diplomacy.
It's also a priority for me to urgently address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. At my direction, our teams are working in the region, including communicating directly with the governments of Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and other Arab nations, and the United Nations to surge support and humanitarian consequences for Hamas attack to help Israel. You know, we can't lose sight of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians had nothing to do with Hamas and Hamas's appalling attacks, and they're suffering as a result as well.
Well, the US says it's working with Egypt, Israel and Qatar to open the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt. For more on this, let's speak to Patty Culhane, who's standing by for us in Washington. Patty, thanks for coming along. So first up, what do we know about US efforts to get its citizens out of Gaza?
Well, what we know is coming from the pool of reporters that travel with the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Then they distribute it to the rest of the Washington, D.C. press corps. That's part of State Department, Pentagon coverage. And they are saying, and this report just came out, that they had reached an agreement with those countries, as you mentioned, to get dual citizens out of the Rafah crossing, not just U.S. citizens. They think they're about 500, but perhaps other dual citizens, people with dual citizenship through Rafah. They said that was going to go from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. local time. That expires, and by all accounts, the Rafah crossing is still, in fact, closed. And we do know they sent a message to American citizens in Gaza to make their way to the Rafah crossing, saying that it could open up with very little notice to be able to get them out. Again, it's a very confusing situation. We do know that this is a priority for the Biden administration. Secretary Blinken is continuing his tour. He was in Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Now we believe he's headed to the United Arab Emirates, and then he will go on to Egypt. Importantly, in all of these places, he's hearing from his counterparts that they're calling for a ceasefire. The U.S. has not called for a ceasefire. They've not used the words restraint. They have said that Israel needs to follow the international laws of war. Israel is not following the international laws of war, committing war crimes, specifically when it's total blockade of Gaza with water, food, and electricity. But the Biden administration not calling them out on that at all.
And Patty, also there's movement of US Embassy personnel. What is the latest on that?
This is usually a sign that the U.S. says it's going to get bad for a very long time. This is not a move they make very easily, but they have announced that all non-essential U.S. personnel from the embassy in Jerusalem, remember former President Donald Trump moved it to Jerusalem, Biden has not moved it back, but saying everyone from the embassy in Jerusalem and the other facilities in Tel Aviv, they're non-essential personnel, their families, they need to get out. And we do know that the U.S. is facilitating flights of U.S. citizens in Israel. They've been chartering planes, getting them out of Tel Aviv. So now taking this additional step, an indication of just how serious and just how bad and just how long the U.S. fears this could go.
You were listening to the Midday News on WINNFM 98.9. The headlines: St. Kitts Nevis Youth Tourism Ambassadors highlighted the St. Kitts Music Festival and Botanical Gardens in Tourism Youth Congress proposals. Finance Minister opens week of activities to commemorate International Credit Union Day. A self-styled prophet is facing manslaughter charges in baptism death. Guyana's opposition continues to question the government on the oil audit fiasco. Internationally, more than 1 million people living in northern Gaza are still being told to evacuate as Israel prepares to launch its expected ground offensive. Thank you for listening.
That was the WINNFM Headline News.
The headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, and Carib Brewery. When it comes to the important things in life, your health, your education, your choice of a life partner, and of course your insurance provider, only the best will do. Caribbean Alliance Insurance is the only insurance company in the Eastern Caribbean with an A excellent rating. We have a robust 3-tier reinsurance strategy that protects our policyholders from multiple catastrophes, even if they occur in quick succession. We spread our risks over 18 territories, ensuring minimal impact to individual territories when a disaster strikes. We provide an excellent claims experience. Claim settlement is usually between 24 to 48 hours. Our A excellent rating means that you are more secure with us. Contact us for motor, property, marine, public liability, employer's liability, and other policies. Dalil Walwyn, people you can trust. Local agent for Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tomorrow secured.
With over a century of perfection behind the Mackeson name, a smooth blend with perfect balance and richness. It's no wonder Mackeson Triple Stout has a legacy of perfection. Enjoyed the world over. Introducing our new look with the same great taste. Mackeson. All hail the king.
Please drink responsibly.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world, whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous. You can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air, we get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises at 466-9595.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
People make the world go
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Yes? Jean! Body spray's hot, boy. I can't take it.
Well, it's a good thing I called. The TDC Home and Building Depots are having their Cool 'em Down sale, and you're sure to get 25% discount on fans, AC units, coolers, fridges, and more to beat this heat.
Girl, Betty, you're making joke.
No, girl. Stop sweating and let's go to the store now.
Come pick me up, because may want to miss the sale at TDC Home and Building Depot.
Cool. Terms and conditions apply. See store for details.
People make the world go
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Inside the News here on WINNFM 98.9. I'm your host, Kevon Brown, this afternoon, and I'm joined by your morning host again, German Abel. And before we jump right into it, we are going to listen to a clip from SEDIMA's Executive Director, Elizabeth Riley, as today marks Disaster Risk Reduction Day. And she's going to, tell us a little bit about why disaster risk reduction is important, especially for the Caribbean region. So we're going to play that clip for you right now.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Caribbean, today, as we mark International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction 2023, this year's theme, Fighting Inequality for a Resilient Future, resonates deeply with the vision of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, SEDIMA, as the focus on achieving resilience is also enshrined in the goal of the Caribbean Regional Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategy and Framework, which aims to achieve safer, more resilient, and sustainable participating states through comprehensive disaster management. We know that disasters do not discriminate. They affect people from all levels of society, regardless of their background, socioeconomic status, or location. Disasters, however, amplify pre-existing inequalities and vulnerabilities, leaving marginalized groups and communities even more disadvantaged. We must address this stark reality. Inequality must also be fought at the global level. The changing climate continues to test our resilience in the region. The International Panel for Climate Change advises that the target of 1.5 degrees will be exceeded. The implication is dire for small island developing states of the Caribbean, Pacific, and Indian Ocean, which contribute less than 1% of the global emissions that drive climate change, but bear the brunt of the impact. SIDS have unique characteristics, such as limited land areas and small open economies that make them particularly susceptible to the effects of climate change. Multi-hazard impacts in the Caribbean region, including from hydrometeorological, geological, seismic, biological, and technological hazards, extend far beyond immediate losses. They derail our development path, including the reversal of progress to reduce poverty, improve health and education, and promote gender equality. In the face of these challenges, we must recognize, in this dispensation, disaster risk reduction is not only about building more robust infrastructure or responding to crises after they occur. It also needs to tackle the root causes of vulnerability and inequality. International cooperation, financial assistance, technology transfer, and capacity building must be targeted to address the unequal impacts of climate-induced disasters on the Caribbean and other SIDS. As a global community, we must work together to collectively share knowledge, resources, and expertise to address these challenges. We must also advocate for climate justice for the Caribbean and other SIDS, pushing for policies that hold those responsible for climate change accountable and supporting those who endure the most of its impact. At the national level, local governments and communities must develop and implement robust adaptation and resilient strategies to protect their people and natural resources. These should include 3 following approaches. 1. Community empowerment. Local communities are on the front line and first responders in disasters. Empowering them with knowledge, skills, and resources is crucial for building resilience. It also means engaging them in decision-making processes that affect their lives. 2. Inclusive disaster risk reduction. Our strategies for disaster risk reduction must be inclusive, considering the needs of marginalized groups, including women, children, the elderly, and persons with disabilities. And 3, equitable access to resources. We must ensure that resources and opportunities are distributed fairly among all members of society. This means addressing disparities in income, access to education, healthcare, and essential services. Today, as we reflect on the theme Fighting Inequality for a Resilient Future, let us commit to working tirelessly to build a world where all individuals, regardless of their circumstances, can thrive and are protected from the ravages of disasters. In closing, I want to express my ongoing gratitude to all national disaster coordinators of SEDIMA states, SEDIMA partners, volunteers, and staff who dedicate themselves to the cause of disaster risk reduction. Let us continue to work collectively towards a more equitable and resilient future. Thank you.
People make the world go round.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
It's October, and the TDC Home and Building Depot has gone pink in support of breast cancer awareness. Shop in-store or online for our pink tag specials with up to 75% off selected items. And be sure to look out for our Flash Sales Fridays, where you get even more savings. Plus, every Saturday from 10 a.m. till 12 p.m., our team of health professionals will be in-house offering free breast screening and the chance to win a free mammogram. So this October, remember to think pink. Think TDC Home and Building Depots. Terms and conditions apply. See stores for details.
People make the world go
Good afternoon, and welcome back to Inside the News here on WINNFM 98.9. I'm your host, Kevon Brown, and I am joined by German Abel. And we're going to continue our discussion based on the clip that we heard before the break. Executive Director of SEDEMA, Elizabeth Riley, speaking about the International Disaster Risk Reduction Day and all the implications that that has for small island developing states in the Caribbean. German, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. So, what are our thoughts on this?
Good afternoon again to St. Kitts and Nevis and those listening. I think she outlined several critical issues that need to be addressed outside of, when it comes to this whole issue of disaster reduction and so forth. St. Kitts and Nevis, for example, and the broader Caribbean, we are at the forefront of climate change and the need to be more resilient. I think over the last maybe year and a half since this administration came in, and they have prioritized climate change and the environment. And we know Dr. Joel Clark, she's been the one who's been championing this topic. I think it has come more to the forefront, and we are now learning and putting it on the front burner of issues that we need to discuss. I think the whole discussion surrounding disaster reduction and climate change is not something that we see as being priority. And I think more education is needed. And this is what Elizabeth Riley was saying in her speech for Disaster Reduction Day. And a couple of things stood out for me, Kevon, from this discussion. One has specifically to do with the inclusive disaster risk reduction.
Right.
Our strategy for disaster risk reduction must be inclusive, considering the needs of the marginalized groups, including women, children, the elderly, and persons with disability. When we talk about disaster reduction and climate change, the elderly and persons with disabilities are not necessarily the people that we put on the front burner when we start to discuss this whole topic. For example, right now, the place is ridiculously hot across the Caribbean. We've been seeing this for the last 3-4 months, right? How do we fit health into this whole discussion? I recently did an interview with the former executive director of CARFA, James Hospitalis, and he also underscored that health and the elderly is of paramount importance when we start to talk about climate change and disaster risk reduction. And I think that's the direction we need to go. I know the Prime Minister at his round table again underscored the need for us to be resilient, build a climate smart hospital. And I think these are the discussions that we need to have going forward, because as you rightly said, 1.5 is going to be surpassed in the coming weeks or months or even years.
But here's one issue that I've had with the education initiatives to I guess make the general public aware of the climate crisis. Is there an actual buy-in from the general public in believing that this is a crisis? Yes, we've noticed that it's gotten hotter. Yes, we've noticed that there has been less precipitation, less rain in the Caribbean across certain countries in the Caribbean, because as we know, Barbados and Trinidad, sometimes they get flood out, whereas up here in the OECS, we're dry for months. Is there buy-in? Is there a connection that is being seen with this lack of rain and this extended heat and drought? Is there a direct connection with the general populace with climate change?
I could say this much. I don't know if you can remember, I suspect it was earlier this year where there was a media training session surrounding climate change. And one of the stark realities that we were given was a survey that was undertaken by the 5Cs Carbon Climate, I don't remember the exact name. But what they found was that people understood that climate change is impacting St. Kitts and Nevis, right? People have accepted that fact. But when you go into them understanding what is climate change, they acknowledge that they don't necessarily understand what climate change is, right? They've been seeing Category 5 hurricanes consistently, probably every year. They've been seeing a place has gotten hotter every year. You know, we had July and August as the hottest months on record. September the second hottest month ever recorded. We've been seeing drought conditions. You know, the reality is water rationing is still going on in the island right now. This year we're in a 40% rainfall deficit.
And there's
People
prediction
understand that, but they don't necessarily understand what is the meaning of climate change. And it's not, I probably can't say that on radio, but I don't think we comprehensively get the understanding, because it's not one of those topics like, let's be frank, we're in the media. You know, when we look at our numbers, we realize people gravitate towards the story and the headline that's gravitating. Man killed somewhere. For example, we had another robbery incident earlier today. You know, those are the headlines that people gravitate towards because it's something that they can share on social media,
or political scandal,
and they get a quick buy-in from it, and it makes the rounds. But when it comes to climate change and certain critical topics, it's not going to get the same level of prominence or the same level of shared views, because it's not something that people gravitate with or resonate with people. They understand that climate change is causing them not to have 24-hour water supply, but is it something that, you know, would pique my interest? No. And I think that is the issue.
So how then do we get it to pique people's issue? That I think that's because, to be fair, we need a buy-in from the general public to actually make moves, because recently the Prime Minister at his roundtable, he called for more youth activism in the fight for climate change, to make the voices of the people even louder, to let the world know that, hey, we the youth, we the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, not just the politicians, not just the policy makers who are going out there and speaking about the needs, but we the people actually see how these things are affecting us, and we need to have something done, because what these bigger countries and these corporations that contribute the most to the climate change that we're experiencing need to understand is that they're affecting the people that inevitably will be spending money on their products.
You're making a valid point there, Kevin. How do we actually get people to buy in and understand the need to pay more attention to climate change? Is the $1 million topic, or as I say, 1.7 billion, you know, the Powerball jackpot in the US. How do we get people to understand? It's not something that you can get them to understand easily. It's a cultural phenomenon that we have not been able to pierce. And this is not only with climate change, but these were other topics. St. Kitts and Nevis is still a maturing society when it comes to media and the realm of understanding certain topics, right? Climate change is something that's impacting us. And you and I both would have done numerous stories specifically on climate change and the impact, food, the water situation, and all of that. But I think we in the Caribbean in general, we have a syndrome where when something impacts us today, we're going to think about it for the next week or two, but then we're going to brush it off until it impacts us again. The issue of climate change has long been discussed, and a colleague of mine from the region, she made a point recently during a discussion I had that and she's probably 23, 24, and she said it is a topic that was discussed or was being discussed prior to her birth. And we still don't seem to get the understanding for people to pay more interest in it. And she herself, is only now gravitating to realizing the importance of climate change. We've been seeing places like Guyana, Suriname, to an extent, Trinidad and Belize being mentioned as important countries in the Caribbean region when it comes to farming and food supply and all that. But do we understand why this is the case? Do we understand why Dr. Drew is saying we need a smart hospital? We can debate the politics in it, right? But the fact that we have stronger and stronger hurricanes, is our infrastructure up to par to deal with a Category 5 hurricane, 1 or 2 Category 5 hurricanes consistently? These are the sort of discussions that we must begin to have to get people to understand. But to answer the question directly, I'm not sure how best we can get people to understand it until we make it quote unquote again. I don't want to say that, but we need to get it to the point that people would be able to understand how it's going to impact them directly. I mean, I did a report recently about the fishing sector, right? We had the Minister of Fisheries on some time back when I was hosting the program, right? We're talking about 25 by 25. Mm-hmm. How is this impacting the fishermen? They have to go farther out to sea to fish. If you could remember maybe a year or two ago when we had this issue of fish poisoning.
Yes.
Right, where it was found after investigation by the Ministry of Health that the fishes came from a location with a lot of volcanic activity, which is not in St. Kitts and Nevis's water. So the fishermen have to go out further. They have to get new boats. They have to get training, and the possibility exists they can encroach on somebody else's territory, which can result in either jail time or a fine, which then impacts their families and their pockets, and it has significant repercussions. So all of these things we have to take into consideration when we talk about climate change and getting people to understand how it's going to impact them.
That is very true. And not just the fishers too, because the farmers, we already having a water issue. We're having an issue where getting access to water, even for farmers to farm, we are already on this trajectory of trying to get the 25% reduction in our food import bill by 2025. But that can only be possible if we have enough food to supply the nation to get that cut.
And that's a critical point, right, Kelvin? Even that in and of itself is proving to be a challenge, because how do you wean someone off of the dependency on imported food, the canned food? I know a lot of us like those fast foods because we don't have to do a lot of work to prepare it.
Right.
We've become that environment where everybody works hard. Right? You're tired, you get up early in the morning, you run out, and so forth. But how do you get to wean people off? And if you wean people off, then they will realize that our food security is not where it should be, right? And then you realize, okay, we're not planting enough. Why are we not planting enough? Okay, probably because we don't have enough farmers who are looking to develop themselves in this business. And then you have to take into consideration we're having less rainfall. So that means, the planters are not getting enough water to plant. You're not getting enough water to feed your animals and so forth. So it's a whole lot that we have to take into consideration. And I don't think enough is being done to get the message over, because it's not something that is on the tongues of people that really want to discuss, unless it's an issue that's directly impacting us.
Right. And a lot of these issues stem from the fact that we kind of need more financing, because one of the ways in which we want to circumvent the water issue is to build that desalination plants. That takes money and that takes time. But as it stands right now, we would just have to wait until those things come to fruition But right now, we just have to deal with the situation. And right now, the extended drought, the lack of rainfall, it would not only affect what planters can plant, but the yield that they get, how much of that yield, and what types of crops that we can get. Financing has always been an issue as it relates to building climate resilience. And another question that popped into my head recently is we're now in day 7 of the intensified fighting between Israel and Hamas, and a lot of the international community is now forcing a lot of aid or channeling is a better way, channeling a lot of aid and a lot of resources to kind of help the people that are suffering in those two communities. So, like, how does that affect the access to financing that we were hoping to get again for maybe the 4th consecutive year? Because first it was thrown off by COVID, and then the recession, the economic decline, and supply chain issues, Russia-Ukraine war, and now the intensified conflict between Israeli and Hamas forces. How does that now affect whatever climate financing was going to come to small island developing states in building resilience, so that even as we go through these climate change events of extended drought and lack of rainfall, the financing could have helped to circumvent the situation, providing water, providing resources and stuff like that? How does that affect the situation now?
That's a very good question. It's a geopolitical environment that we live in, and it's not something that would ever change anytime soon. Again, climate change for the developing country, or the developed countries rather, is not something that's of importance to them. Let's be frank. We want to protect our allies, people that we support, that we can control. Yes, you guys on climate change, you take a back seat until we decide we're going to come again. That's the stark reality that we're dealing with. The issue for me is, how do we as small island states, St. Kitts and Nevis, Barbados, Antigua, for example, they have been in drought, if you ask me, for the last 15, 20 years. No, because the thing is, every time you go to Antigua, you realize how hot they are, and they hardly get any rainfall. Right. That's why they're dealing with this water situation. Since I knew myself, they're dealing with a water situation. I've been there quite some time last year, and it's a significant issue. But how do we as small island states deal with this problem? Somebody asked me recently, what are my views on places like Guyana and Suriname that are now producing oil, and their influence on the whole climate change discussion. And I think they are the leaders, or should be the leaders in the region, pushing for small island states. So again, Suriname and Guyana are developing countries, and they're landlocked in South America. They don't necessarily face the same issues that the St. Kitts and Nevis or these island states in the Caribbean would face. So the whole thing is, for me, that they're the ones who are also contributing a bit to the climate discussion, are in a position to assist us in getting our message across for small island states. What we need to do is push more for loss and damage and get a significant commitment. And that's why discussions like COP and the United Nations are just like big wigs around a table knocking glass, because they're going to commit, but how much can we get them to actually deposit the monies where it is? Put your money where your mouth is, and that's not what we're getting. And that for me is a challenge. And then now they're going to commit $200 million in aid packages to Ukraine and Israel and so forth. But while small island states are still being hampered by natural disasters that we necessarily don't do. Our footprint is what, 0.000 something from St. Kitts and Nevis. So it's difficult, but we have to push more and lobby a bit harder in order to get the necessary resources that we need to combat climate change. We need to build a smart hospital. we need to build proper infrastructure to combat the growing strength of Category 5 hurricanes. Well, I mean, there's a tropical storm out there, and then there's another one that's going to projected to pass close by the Caribbean, or, storms can make last minute divergence, and then, they dump a lot of rainfall. So it's a major concern that we as small island states have to take into consideration when we lobby. And Prime Minister Motley said this, all the regional leaders said this at the United Nations General Assembly. Climate change is still a real existential threat to us in the region. And we discussed this last year, and we come back to discuss it again, and no movements have been made for us.
Sometimes it feels like movement won't actually happen unless significant disaster has already happened. That's what it feels like as it relates to the movements on climate financing, loss and damage funding, and that kind of thing. It feels like disaster has to have already happened, and then all of a sudden the money will be released.
But that's correct. But even when it happened, there's only a short time frame or time span that attention is actually placed there. A typical example, let us look at the Bahamas. Let us look at Dominica. Those were two territories that were impacted by significant hurricanes. Where's the discussion? Why is the discussion not continuing? I think the Bahamas had the storm, in 2020 or 2021? Dominica is still rebounding from Irma and Maria. They've not gotten back to that position that they were. I mean, when I asked the Dominica Prime Minister last year the question, he said if it was not for the CBI program that they have, then, a lot of the development that they've seen over the last year, 2 years would not necessarily have been possible without their CBI program. And we know what's the problem with that now, because it's under threat. And the IMF said, you can't necessarily put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to that, because it's on shaky grounds right now. So that's the sort of challenge that we have. It's only a short span that they pay attention to this until COP comes around again, which is going to be had next month or December. And then probably January, we had Christmas. New Year comes, we don't pay attention, we find some other topic to discuss. And then when the hurricane season is about to begin, we now start to discuss, oh yes, climate change is a real existential threat, and then the cycle continues.
The cycle is bound to continue, because even before we get to hurricane season, we'll get winter. So the winter will either be too bad or not as bad as they expected, and then it's climate change. But it's not.
The funny thing, right, Kevin, as you've mentioned, winter. The U.S. is seeing heat in October, summer type weather in October, when it should be cool fall sort of weather condition, and you still don't believe that it's climate change?
And what's going to happen in the peak months, which are January and February? Is it going to still be heat, or is it just going to be the worst cold that they've had in the last 10 years? We don't know.
That's true, and for us, we depend on that cold to give us some relief. And the Caribbean Meteorological and Hydrological Center is projecting that we're going to feel significant heat well into the new year,
right,
when it's supposed to be cool, cold weather for us.
Well, if we're gonna get the heat, I mean that sounds like good news for some revelers during Carnival, because it means not much rain. Silver lining.
No, we need a wet fed, Kevin. We cannot use the water.
The water that we don't have.
Get the rain.
Yeah, the water that we don't have. We can't use the water that we don't have for the wet fed.
But yeah, I think the critical discussion now is the issue of loss and damage, because it is here. It is the new normal. I was told I need to stop saying it's a new normal, but it's reality. It's the new normal. Climate change is here, and we need funds to offset the effects of that, right? Like I said, Guyana and Suriname have oil. They're using that to bolster resilient infrastructure. They're building smart hospital, they're building stronger roads, they're building pipes, they're building the electrical infrastructure that's going to, withstand certain climate challenges. We in St. Kitts need to do that. Can we say that, we're going to take money from the CBI program to directly invest in renewable energy? We build a smart hospital, we change out the pipes, we change our electrical grids. That will bankrupt St. Kitts and Nevis. So it's now important for us to get this funding to rebuild and build resilient. I mean, I saw a report, a blog from the International Monetary Fund, $800 million, and the Caribbean region still has not been able to build resilient.
As you said that, I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine last evening, who's in the energy sector, and I asked the question: how long and how much money would it take for St. Kitts and Nevis to become resilient, just as it relates to energy? And he laughed in my face. He laughed in my face. That's the only answer he could give me.
No, because the thing is, the issue for me is when you build this year, you're only building for 2023. You never know whether or not, God forbid, we have a strong, something where flooding occurs. Typical example, Irma Maria. Look at what happened when the storms passed. The sea levels came all the way in land. It damaged Old Road. We had to build resilient. We're still working on the Old Road right now. That's for another discussion. Then we had the whole issue of some houses were damaged, right? We saw what happened along the Bay Road, and a lot of people there are susceptible to flooding or prone to flooding and overtopping and all that. So that then means that they have to relocate in the event of something happening. That then means that the government will have to facilitate some aspect of housing for them, whether it be giving them money, assisting them to build. That is monies that the government did not budget for.
Right.
So it's very expensive when we start to talk about climate change and the impact of climate change on small island states. We don't have the resources to necessarily push in that direction. I think this is what we need to get the developed world, the United States, the Canada, the UK, the China, a lot of these countries that are emitting. I mean, CARICOM is going to be having a meeting with Canada this coming week. Yes. And I'm sure that this is one of the discussions that will come up. We need to find critical allies. And I was in a discussion recently. The person who's chairing COP28, right? is one of those leaders of a big emitting country. So how do we get from here to there and getting them to understand that loss and damage fund is critical for us?
That's a fantastic question. The problem is we probably don't have an answer, because even the big countries are being affected by climate change, because as we know, Canada was on fire. The fact that Canada was on fire is unheard of. Like, Canada was on fire. Canada, which is known for its cold, its frigidity, its year-round low temperatures, was on fire. And it might not be the biggest country that is an emitter, but it is a big country with a big population that contributes to emissions. We heard that Europe was basically going through the worst heat wave that they were going through earlier in the summer. They were having energy crisis issues in winter when it got too cold, and there was the whole Russia pipeline situation happening. We've heard so many different variations of the larger countries who have the largest emissions, even China, the largest emissions, going through examples of what climate change has done and has impacted them, and yet the funding has not been made available to the globe. Most of what they're doing is probably building their own resilience, because as with any country, they'll look for themselves first to build their own resilience, but the SIDS and other vulnerable countries are still clamoring and asking for loss and damage funding, for concessionary loans, for access to resources. We're still asking, and on the agenda, I assume, for COP28 will still be loss and damage funding, concessionary loans, resources for small island developing states, asking and asking and asking and pledging and pledging and pledging.
You're correct. You're correct, Kevin. I'm actually looking here at the Caribbean's position. When it comes to loss and damage fund, the region is going in as a collective, and they're demanding new and additional support of at least $100 billion annually to the loss and damage fund to finance immediate reconstruction and rehabilitation efforts in developing countries affected by extreme climate events. Right. Mm-hmm. This is the sort of thing that we are looking for. Realistically, are we going to get that?
Well,
right. And I think this is where the discussion is.
Well, if the Paris Agreement is any indication.
Well, the thing is, though, what climate experts will say, and I've had a few discussions with some from the region. There's some positives that came out of some of the discussion. And they will tell you one of the biggest would be the 1.5 degree, right? Mm-hmm. That one came out and that was the Caribbean's position. We do not want the temperature to rise more than 1.5 degrees, right? And that was something that was signed off on. So that was one positive. But the issue is, and this is just my view, if we sit down and we get the developed world to actually contribute, they'll probably say no. If we contribute, it's a sign that we're accepting that we're guilty of causing climate change, and that's where I believe this issue of actually getting funding is proven to be a challenge, because they don't want to acknowledge that it's some of what they would have done that's causing climate change to be an issue for us in the Caribbean.
So right now they're debating whether they want to be guilty now or guilty later.
That's a good question.
I mean, if it's being reported by international bodies that larger countries are contributing more to the effects of climate change, and that those effects are more or less affecting the lowest contributors the most, then they're debating whether they want to be guilty now or guilty later. We have a call. Let's take a call. Sorry, we lost that call. Call back in if you can. But yeah, go ahead, German.
Yeah, you're correct. I think. But for me, though, whether or not they accept that they're guilty now or later, the threat is always there, and we need to get some level of commitment. And coming out of the meeting, CARICOM's meeting ahead of the COP27, where they sat down, regional leaders sat down, the second Caribbean Small Island Developing States High-Level Dialogue on Climate Change, which was held in Grenada last month. You know, one of the things that they suggested was to have a legal framework of actions against major emitters, right? And I think that's a discussion that we've always been trying to get done. You know, hold them to what they agreed to. If you agree to raise $100 billion annually, you have to commit to presenting $100 billion annually, because small island states like St. Kitts and Nevis cannot, and the Prime Minister has reiterated this numerous times, numerous administrations have said this, governments across the region have indicated this, you cannot be affected by even a tropical storm, because that can cause significant damage, right? And you know, the minister has been really doing a good job in terms of championing it and putting it out there. But now we need to get people to understand the importance of this.
I agree. If there's one thing as it relates to financing, not just pledges, but financing. If there's one financial positive that you would think would be the most beneficial to SIDS coming out of COP28, what would that be?
That's we need to get some sort of commitment to even if it's an increase on what is there now. We need some financial commitment to building resilient infrastructure. Some aspects of it we need, even if they're giving $100 million now, if they can commit and hold themselves to say March next year we're going to establish a fund with the IMF or World Bank where $150 million will be in there that these small island states can draw down consistently. But even that is going to be difficult. We need some mechanism to hold them, to actually getting the funding, and I don't like to say this, but it's just reality. I don't look forward to COPs. Sorry, because it's just going to be another talk shop. That we're going to discuss this, we're going to write the stories, and we might not even see anything.
Right. That is very much.
But one of the things I must say, though, Kevin, I think one of the things that came out of the United Nations General Assembly is that we need to change the IMF, World Bank, and these other lenders have to change their assessment mechanism of how they assess loans and concessional financing for small island states, especially like St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, and those in the Caribbean.
Yeah, that we know that climate activist Mia Mottley, Barbados Prime Minister, she's been lobbying for that for like the last 5 years or so. I think when she made that address that became a global sensation, it was in 2021 or 2022?
2021, I believe.
Yeah, and she's been lobbying for concessionary financing and loss and damage financing and low interest loans as it relates to, and as you said, changing the way in which these lenders determine who should get the money when, how, and how much. For the longest
That's
while.
actually a question I posed to the International Monetary Fund recently, and I'm still awaiting a response from them surrounding that particular question, whether or not there's any consideration in changing the assessment mechanisms for small island developing states.
And I think that is where we are stuck, a lot of waiting. I think that is where we actually don't really have a choice other than to be stuck waiting until these lenders change their policies and change their regulations, until the loss and damage financing fund actually gets money, until money starts to actually flow. We will forever just be waiting and then, facing the effects of climate change as it gets worse.
I think the problem for us in the Caribbean is CARICOM needs to play a more forceful role and a strengthening role, not just Barbados or St. Kitts and Nevis lobbying for small island states. We need CARICOM, and that's why I like the position that they're taking this year, that they're going into COP28 as a collective. But CARICOM needs to play a more forceful and dynamic role in terms of representing small island states within the Caribbean region. And I don't just mean CARICOM member states. I mean small island states, the territories, the islands, everybody in the Caribbean region. Because, and to be honest, and this was also something that's another challenge for us in the Caribbean. When we look at major organizations like IMF and the World Bank, they lump us in with Latin America. So we are the forgetful arm of the world. Even Africa has a bigger say than some of the topics than the Caribbean region. We are lumped with Latin America. We're not the Caribbean. It's Latin America and the Caribbean. I mean, we had the Western Hemisphere economic outlook, and it's the Latin America and Caribbean region. And this in and of itself is posing a challenge for us. And I think this is where CARICOM can stand up and be a bit more forceful to get our message across to the world.
I agree. But as it stands, we've done a lot of talking. We've advocated for what we believe in.
Yes.
We've called for more work to be done. I agree that CARICOM needs to kind of branch off on its own and actually stand up as a unit, one singular unit for the benefit, because that's kind of what CARICOM was supposed to be in the first place. And be the one voice that stands for everything that is Caribbean. For the Caribbean people, what our best interest is, our interests are, where we need the help the most. But as you said, currently the reality is we're lumped with Latin America, and until we are unlumped and our voice is deemed by the lenders and the international bodies as being strong enough to stand on its own and to make an impact, we're stuck being lumped with Latin America, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the Caribbean community needs some focus. It needs some attention. It needs help, as we know.
Yes.
But we're kind of stuck where we are.
Yeah, you're correct. And it's something that I think our leaders need to begin to look at. I agree, that this coming week, we have the Canada CARICOM Summit. And I know a lot of that, we're going there with a collective in terms of interest. I know we're kind of out of time, but we as individual territories have our own geopolitical interests. And then when we go overseas, we lobby, so one country may be with Taiwan, another country may be with China, somebody support Russia, somebody support Israel, somebody support Palestine, right? But if we are to move forward and see the full benefits of whether it be climate change or anything for the individual countries, we have to go as a collective. We have to go as one in terms of getting our voices heard. St. Kitts can go, but they'll just look at St. Kitts as a small island state with no influence. When Barbados go, they'll just look at Barbados as a, who's that? So when we go as a region,
right,
including representing some of the ABC Islands and St. Martin and these other places, that's what I'm saying. CARICOM needs more work after 50 years. It has made some progress, but at the end of the day, we need everybody to come together and be more forceful. I mean, when Irma Maria passed, even when Dominica was, Bahamas got damaged during the storm, the last hurricane that hit them, I can't remember now, CARICOM played a critical role. We have CRIF, which is the insurance fund for climate change. It's a CARICOM initiative, right? So we need everybody to come together to be forceful in getting the message across that CARICOM is a major player on the world stage, whether it be climate change, gun violence that's affecting us. All of that we need to be collective.
Human trafficking, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, all of that, because it's all affecting us. But German, as you said, we are out of time. And this discussion can always continue because there's always more to say. But we're out of time, unfortunately, here on Inside the News. Thank you so much for listening in on our discussion, both the morning session and this afternoon. Thank you, German, for leading the morning session and for joining me this afternoon as we speak about climate change and the Caribbean's need to push more and to increase our voices on the international front to make it known that we are here, we are important, we are significant, we are a part of what would be considered global leaders, and we are in a very advantageous position globally. So you know, bigger countries should appreciate that and maybe pay more attention to us. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us here on WINNFM 98.9. I was your host, Kevin Brown, joined by German Abel. Thank you so much for listening. Stick and stay as we give you more programming.
People make